years, started at KTSU, and thank you, Professor Walker, for being such an instrumental part of my journey. But what does it feel like to be the first African-American to serve in an elected role of county clerk? It feels amazing, if you ask my feeling. But I also look at it as, you know, okay, now I've made history, or the people that's been a part of this portion has made history, but how do we continue a pipeline of not only, but more of? And so I feel amazing, but I also feel kind of like a little bit of weight on my shoulder, because I don't want to be the first and the last. I want to be the first that will continue a pipeline of leaders and creating more spaces for young African Americans, and to show them, you know, it's possible to do this. So it's an amazing feeling, but I realized I didn't get here on my own, that there were a lot of people that played the role to help me get here. And it's also a bit of weight on the shoulder, and you know, kind of focusing in on, well, what will she do with this office? What talents will she bring to the table? What will she do differently from what other county clerks have done or have not done?
And that's a good segue. What will you do differently than others? Let's just talk about that.
Well, I have a plethora of things that I wanted to. One of the things that has recently happened is that the county clerk's office will no longer have elections. And that's been a big baby, a part of this office for many, many years. It's going to go into an independent office called an elections administrative office, and that office will go on to voter registration. Most people don't even know who their county clerk is or what their county clerk does. And we do a lot of amazing things. Look, if you are a citizen of Harris County, sometime in your lifetime, you'll come through this office. We handle the recordings and providing birth and death records. If you ever start your first business or your own business, you get your DBA, you're doing business as, you file that assumed name with our office. We also handle all vital statistics and records. If you have real property or deed records or any of that, if you're in the real estate industry or those types of things, that's all done through our office. And most importantly, I am the record keeper of the civil court and probate court and commissioner's court. Now, it might sound a lot of paper pushing to you, but it's far beyond that. I mean, we serve over 4.4 million people here in Harris County, and on a daily basis, thousands of individuals in some of those services that I've just mentioned. If you start your own business, say you open a restaurant and you want to get your liquor license, well, you get your liquor license through the Harris County Clerk's office. And so those are just some things that I think the general public have no idea what we do. And so part of what I want to bring to the table is something that's very passionate to me. We talked about me being the first African American, is make sure that we're creating this pipeline of leadership of diversity. Look, I want the employees, I want those that are in leadership to look like the county. Our county is a melting pot of diversity. We have Indian community, we have the Asian community, African American, and so I want my employees and those people that serve here in leadership to look like the people that we serve, to understand those communities in ways that we'll be able to meet the needs of those individuals that we serve greatly. And so that's one of the things at the top of my list. I'm already looking at leadership, and I'm looking at, do we reflect all backgrounds, all types, and that would help us make sure that we respond to the community necessary. One of the things that we've learned in this last year is the inefficiencies due to COVID. Our office is pretty much a public-facing office. Those services I mentioned, people come inside, they get those documents done. And because of COVID, we had to close our doors pretty early in March to the public and try to figure out how to serve thousands of individuals in those still service areas. And so, which meant the mail and some virtual is kind of what happened. Customer service calls become backlogged, and so many things we had to figure out, wait, we're not able to do this virtually. And so part of what we'll do in this next year is look at statute and look at the law and how do we still provide services, but do it safely, securely, and in a virtual manner. Right now, the law doesn't provide that individuals can get their marriage licenses virtually. And so we talked to other states. We went to Wisconsin and did a virtual call and said, how are you all able to give your marriage license virtually? Where their law supports that. And so as we get ready to go into the 21 legislation session, our office will kind of be coming to the table and talking about how does the law need to support the services we provide so that we can continue to do innovative things, in this virtual world, because COVID's not going to go away overnight, and we'll have to figure out how do we still get this done and do it in a timely and safe manner. So those are the things at the top of my list, diversity, finding how we continue to serve people, and providing a robust call system where people are not waiting 20 and 30 minutes to get someone to get their questions answered and to get their needs met, that they're getting someone face on to help them prepare and walk them through the process.
That is amazing and so innovative. And that's the one thing I want to talk to you about, because there was an unsuccessful lawsuit brought against your office to try to block drive-through voting, which is so innovative. But many people saw that as a voting suppression tactic, but it failed. And what would you say to those who don't understand this level of innovation in the 21st century?
Yeah, again, like I mentioned, with COVID, we had to figure out a lot of ways to do things. And there's some states that do all mail ballot program. Texas is not one of those states. And so we pretty much use electronic voting systems for those states. Now, we do have mail ballots, but the mail ballot program was only for those 65 and above, disabled or outside of the county, confined in jail, but not convicted. And so only in state law now provides only those individuals can vote by mail. Well, what we learned is that, this probably should be a program that we look at, but if we can't change the statute now, what are the other ways people can vote safely, securely, and do it in privacy? And so right now, for years, we've had what is called curbside voting. Well, curbside voting is where you could pull up to the polling location, hit the curbside button, but this was specifically for those who couldn't get into the polling location and was disabled to vote in their cars with the voting machine. So we wonder, how can we magnify this with COVID? And drive-through voting was birthed. Now, I can't take full responsibility. That was a machine thought up through this office with a lot of great talented people. And so the code did not say that, a building was just only this type of structure. And so what we did is we got with 10 companies and we walked through an entire mock trial of what would it look like to drive up and vote. Just like Sonic, the only difference is you don't get your favorite drink, you get your ballot in your car. And are we within the bounds of the laws to do so? And so I think what we saw politically is that a certain party wasn't so happy about us expanding ways to vote and figuring it out. We're the third largest county in the United States. And so what became an amazing plan, a thoughtful plan, and a safe plan became intimidating for certain political parties. And I think that's exactly what we saw was voter suppression. The day before Election Day, we were sitting in a federal court wondering whether a judge would throw out over 100,000 ballots of voters, Republican, Democrat, Independent, of people that just chose to drive up and vote and do it safely. Now, in my history of 15 years, that's never happened. I've never sat in a federal courtroom the day before Election Day. So you can only imagine what that felt like as elections administrators of us trying to make sure we accomplish making voting accessible, easy, and equitable across the board. And so I think that's what you're going to continue to see on the election side. We have a new elections administrator. Her name is Isabel Longoria. But those are some of the things that we're going to be looking for and continue to advocate for in the coming years, is that we have to figure out how to continue to be innovative and expansive in voting and voting rights, which is always at the very clear top of the table and should be.
Unfortunately, it's a lot of misinformation out there about our democracy and about voting. Help us to clear that up, because many elected officials, people who are of authority, know if our election system is safe. And that's the question everybody wants to know. Is it safe?
Is it safe? Absolutely. I've been in the elections industry for, like I said, this November is 15 years, and we have accountabilities. Like, we don't just get to go figure out what machines we want to use and this is the next best thing and here we go. It has to be certified by the state of Texas. It has to be certified within statute. And then a step further is, Department of Justice, Secretary of State, there's a lot of agencies that hold elections administrators accountable. Now, again, every state is different. And I would like to say, the machines that we have now is Hardin or Civic. They're a company that has to go through this process of training and making sure that they, kind of go through this checks and balances of, how safe and secure, how efficient does this work for your state and for your county. And so, while there's always, I think anytime that you're doing something electronic, I think honestly, if we're just being honest, there's always a way to try and hack or disrupt the political process or the system. And we've seen a lot of reflection of that being discussed over the airwaves. Russia's involved and this person's involved and that person's involved, which, as you kind of get into politics, there's a lot of myths and uncertainty. And I think what it does, especially in different communities, is it kind of puts the fear or the mistrust in the political process. And people wonder, well, what's the use in me voting anyway? Because I don't know if it's being honest. And then when you have tactics like, the state or the governor putting out things saying, okay, well, you can't vote this way or you can't do it that way. I think what it does is continue to discourage individuals to be a part of the political process. But this is what I say, and what I've said over the couple of months with individuals is we have to show up and be a part of the political process. We have to start understanding and learning. Maybe that starts at showing up to your children's school board meeting. Maybe that starts at paying attention to the City of Houston meetings, or just being a part of your local neighborhood civic association, right? Because if we're not a part of this political process and we're not at the table, and elected officials and those stakeholders don't know that, what I say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so in order to make sure that you're not on the menu and you're at the table, is you have to figure out what space you want to activate. And there's a place for everyone to activate. Everyone's not going to run for office. Everyone's not going to run a campaign, but you can be actively involved in your communities and what's happening locally that eventually funnels to an elected official. And when we're part of the process, we show up, we vote, we pay attention, we hold our elected officials accountable by letter writing and asking for meetings. What then happens is those elected officials have to pay attention to the people that they serve. They have to hear them out. And if they want to continue to be in office, they have to make sure that they're making the changes that people want to see. And so going back to the discussion on the voting process, is you can choose to have these ideas of what you believe based on what you see in the media, or you can choose to be a part of it and be an active member of getting an understanding so that you're at the table. And so, I understand the mistrust. I think it's education. If we're getting involved with education and understanding the process, talking to people like myself and other elected officials, you become more inclined to be a part of the process.
And it was a historic turnout because of your efforts, right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And so I was a first-time candidate. I've worked in the office and have a array of experience, but I've always been behind the scenes, working for other clerks and other elected officials. And when the opportunity came, one thing I realized is, do you want to keep teaching someone else something you already know? Or, you have the opportunity to do something different, but there was nervousness behind that. It's not easy to decide to go run for office, especially if you have a family and other people that you're concerned about and their influence. And so the one thing I did know is that I didn't want to look back and at least say that I didn't try. And at the time, I was the second in command to the county clerk. And I think that I had been prepared. I'd worked and showed myself approved to take the opportunity. And so I worked in the office and I ran in the office at the same time. And it wasn't an easy job, but I stuck by that, and I reached voters on every single platform that I possibly could try. Because we had COVID on, you couldn't show up to a town hall meeting and shake hands with people. You had to figure out how to do that virtually, or put things, on the doors. And so we could talk about campaigning another day, but bottom line is, what we saw this November is I was able, as a first-time candidate, to beat a previous incumbent, someone who was the previous county clerk and was my boss, actually. And I was able to beat that person by a very large margin, by 100,000 plus votes in my race. But it was because I had done all of the community work. People knew my ethic, and I'd built relationships over the years for it to not be a hard choice for voters. And that's what we saw this November. And that's what we'll continue to see. This county is going to keep growing. And in order to maximize and keep people involved, is you have to stay in front of the story, in front of the narrative. And I learned that from you, Professor Walker.
Wow. And what then is the greatest takeaway or takeaways from this whole entire experience for you? Because making history is not new to you, because you were also the first Black female chief deputy
Yeah,
in
that's
that
right. That's
office.
right.
I mean, so there's so many important takeaways for you, for Black women. You look at the first Black female vice president. There's so